Oh, hey, welcome back. Well, welcome to Comic Book News. Welcome to the first ever Airstream live stream, whatever you want to call this for Comic Book News. I've got some really exciting guests to talk to today. I've got some all professionals in the comic book industry, whether in retail or on the creative side. First, I want to introduce Leaf from Mission Comics, Leaf Smith from Mission Comics in San Francisco.
Yes.
I want to introduce Jim Mortensen of Comics Revolution in the Chicago area. I want to introduce Cliff Biggers, Dr. Nose in the Atlanta area, and also, of course, well known for his work in Comic Shop News. And then last but not least, friend of the show, returning guest, DC Comics inker Mick Gray. Guys, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
I wish it was kind of happier occasions that prompted this. We all know what situation the world is in right now, right? And everybody knows there's a lot bigger fish to fry than than comic books. But man, for people like you, that's your life and your world and your universe. And we take it seriously here on this channel. So we're going to talk about things from that perspective. We're not trying to give a short shrift to any of the major difficulties that are going on in this country and all over the world. We're not trying to minimize that stuff and talk about funny books, but these things are important to us too, and so we're gonna talk about them today. So the elephant in the room, it's the comic shop apocalypse. We saw comic shops all over the country trying to figure out what to do. Are we going to stay open? Some states were forcing businesses to close. Others allowing them to stay open. Some stores closing voluntarily. Now the news just dropped that Diamond Comics has announced after this Wednesday, today, there will be no new comic shipping for the foreseeable future. We don't know when that's going to end and what that means for the industry, but for people that make their living off of guys and gals coming to their store every Wednesday and getting that regular hit of product, this is a major blow in what is already a super challenging time for retailers in general. Forget about comic book retailers. Retailers all over the world, malls, big or small, big box, mom and pop are all in trouble. So I want to just start with, I'm going to go around the horn here and let's just talk. Each one of you just give us a quick statement about like your store and the impact this is having, your local laws, and what you guys are doing to cope with the problems. And we're going to start with Leaf in San Francisco. Leaf, what do you got for us?
Well, I would say actually things up until this point have been really positive. It's probably last year was my best year ever, and this year was looking very, very good. Went to Comics Pro last month, and it was a very positive atmosphere. There's definitely problems with the big two, but comic books in general we're doing really well up until this point. And last week on Monday, I was forced to close by local county officials, and that's now extended to all of California for all non-essential businesses. And it is really, really scary because bills are stacking up, and I have no customers.
Any thoughts on whether there's going to be any kind of, I don't know, relief provided for rent? You're already in such a challenging retail environment in San Francisco.
True, but we have a pretty progressive local government. They've already instituted a moratorium on evictions for any commercial leases or rents agreements. So that's at least up until mid-April, and it may be extended. But and there is grant programs already in place to help small businesses. So I have some faith that those programs will provide some help, but it's sort of how quickly and what do I do in the meantime?
Right. Well, we're pulling for you, buddy. I want to hear from Jim Mortensen now in Chicago. Jim, what's happening with your store?
Well, we're closed. The lockdown order came down on Saturday at 5 o'clock. We honored that. We've done any even curbside pickups since then. We can do deliveries under certain parameters, I think, but I think at this point we're just going to try to stay low and conserve cash. Interestingly, as a bitter old man that I am, there's a lot of talk about sacrifice, and my wife, who's salaried, works from home. She probably works fewer hours and makes the same paycheck, and she probably doesn't have to drive to work and everything else. Likewise, a lot of folks who make good money, Dan included probably, are able to work completely successfully and not lose anything. Whereas us as small business owners, I've got to pay rent, I've got to pay utilities, I've got to pay insurance. Hopefully I can help out with staff as well. And we literally get no assistance whatsoever. So, airlines will get $50 billion. The TV film industry will get billions of dollars. The independent guys, good luck. We get loans. So the fact that we have to take out loans to pay back the money that's being taken away from us is not nearly as enticing as a grant would be. But we're doing what we can. We're trying to stay the course, and we're in a good enough position where we'll be able to weather this. But unlike Leaf, it hasn't been our best year. And the overall comics field has been pretty temperate recently, led by the big two and their editorial choices and decisions. But I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Well, Jim, thanks. We're going to come back to that. I definitely want to talk to you as a guy who's got multiple stores, including one that used to be in a mall. I want to talk to you just about retail trends in general soon. So we're going to circle back to that. And right now, I want to talk to Cliff Biggers in Atlanta. Doctor knows. Cliff, how's your store coping with this problem?
Well, so far we're in a different situation than Leaf or Jim. Georgia has not shut anyone down as a state, and our county issued an emergency order yesterday, and we thought there was a good chance we would be shut down, but our emergency order only limits non-essential retail businesses to operating no earlier than 6 a.m. and no later than 11 p.m., which means that we're still open, theoretically, our regular hours. Now, the good side of that is that even with fewer customers coming in at one time, our customer flow is such that I don't think we've had more than 4 customers in the store at the same time since last week. And yet we have still managed to maintain our sales numbers. Last week was off about 10 or 15%. This week has been right on average, thanks in part by the fact that those of us who did get books were allowed to start selling them yesterday. And so we were able to spread out one-day sales into 2 days, which was good. But I don't predict that's going to last that much longer. I'm looking at the number trends for my state and for my county, and the numbers of COVID infections are going up. We're not seeing the flattening that anyone had hoped for with the things that have been done so far. So I suspect within the next week, if those numbers don't begin to change dramatically, we may be finding ourselves shut down. We're in a situation, as Jim said, we can weather that. It was not, last year was good, a solid year for us. It was up over the year before. This year, unfortunately, has been down both January and February. We're down over January and February of the prior year. So, I blame a lot of that on the fact that for the most part, we've had a self-fulfilling prophecy from publishers. They say the books won't sell, so they don't give us any good books. We don't have good books, so the books don't sell. But now we throw in this health crisis on top of that, and there is nothing exciting, thrilling to bring customers in the store unless a speculator app tells them they need to buy this book right now or they're going to die.
I want to do a whole show dedicated to that speculator app, man, soon. I feel like we got a little bit bigger fish to fry, but maybe we'll come back to that for sure because it's a fascinating topic to me. Okay, I want to go now. I want to talk to Mick Gray. Mick is not a comic retailer. Mick is a comic book inker. He's a creative professional. He works for DC Comics. He's done some of the most amazing ink work on top of some of the most amazing pencilers, on top of some of the most amazing writers in the industry. He's done it all. He's won Eisner Awards. On top of all that, just to piss you off, he's the nicest guy you're ever going to want to meet. All that stuff. So, Mick, you're Captain Positive. That's how I always think of you. You are a positive fella.
You can call me Johnny Proton. People call me Johnny Proton.
So give us a hit of sunshine, baby, and tell us, but also give us some reality of what are you seeing on the horizon? What are you hearing from your bosses at DC, if you're allowed to talk about that?
Yeah.
There's a new creative regime going on at DC right now, as well as all this happening. So please let us know what's going on.
Yeah, changeover happening. I'm at the moment, for the last, I guess, about year or so, I haven't been really working on a regular basis with DC Comics. I've kind of went and did, small little projects with them over the years. I've kind of since stopping working with Patrick Gleason, which we had a 60-issue run on Batman and Robin and things like that for 8 years. I've kind of just started to branch out into indie comics and more European stuff too. So those were the directions I wanted to move, and I just fell into both of them. So, but yeah, I can just read you the letter I got from Bob Harris today to our DC talent community. Everyone here at DC is thinking of you and the challenges that you're all facing in this current crisis. I want to stress that DC is fully open for business. All editorial teams and support staff are working remotely for the foreseeable future, but that will not interfere with our day-to-day operations. Our main concern, of course, is your well-being and that of your families. No matter where you are in the world, take care and don't hesitate to reach out. We realize that there may be unexpected challenges ahead, and I want you to know that we are there to help. No one knows, of course, how long this current situation may last. For now, this is our new normal, and as we transition to a company working from home, we gain the flexibility to overcome any challenge. Most importantly, we remain incredibly excited about the stories we will create there. Best, Bob. So yeah, like I say, I haven't really been that connected with DC other than over the last year I did 2 or 3 different short stories with them. But yeah, it's like we are in a different world now. I mean, I was already a freelancer and I'm working from home, but now my wife's home working. My daughter's going to West Valley doing online courses, and I'm teaching an inking course with the Academy of Art online too. So complete upheaval. But like you say, I'm so blessed. I'm not really affected like you guys. Right. I don't have a store. I can continue my work, and my income can continue to come in. So, yeah.
So speaking of income, we've got a chat online from a friend of the show, Derek McCaw, wants to know, are we doing mail order? He does a podcast called Fanboy Planet, and we're going to have him on this live stream soon, very soon, to do a sort of comics media thing. Maybe we'll bring Cliff back if he's into it too. Sure. Let's go around the horn for the retailers, guys. Mail order, is that something you're pivoting towards? You already do? You're thinking about, or it's just out of the question? Leaf, what's going on with mail order?
As I understand it, our order in California is if it's non-essential, then we are not supposed to leave our house and go into the store and do mail order. So no, I'm not doing mail order.
Okay.
I'm taking this pretty seriously.
Yeah. Jim, what about you?
It seems that's roughly the same here. It's unclear if we can do some mail order or if we can do some deliveries. So there may be some of that for long-term customers, but we're not really set up to be Midtown Comics or someplace like that can do a wide range of it.
Right. Cliff, what about you?
We are doing mail order for our established customers and for some people in the area who are having trouble getting books, but we're not set up as a full national mail order store. I've it's not something I've ever pursued because I really enjoy dealing with customers. That's why I enjoy selling comics. It's the interaction, the talking comics with customers who become friends, that sort of thing. This unusual situation, we are doing it, but it's not a business we want to actively pursue.
And actually, I'm going to go to Mick for a second here because Mick, you're involved with some Kickstarter stuff. That is mail order. That is a potential way for somebody who does graphic novels now and might not be able to get into the comic shops where they can get the hand selling and nurturing they need, and some are moving towards Kickstarter. So
I mean, I noticed over the last maybe four years how incredibly gigantic the Kickstart movement has happened, and I can't remember how much my publisher Michael Finn received through Kickstart, but it was pretty huge. I mean, if you think about it, if you're making a 100-page hardcover book, it's going to have to be pretty substantial. And he pulled it off, and I've seen other ones really pull it off too. And yeah, it seems like the future, but can Kickstart, do you see a future where Kickstart could help the retailers stay in business? Can Kickstart feed the retailers?
I before we go to those guys, I want to say I've thought about this a lot, is that if they had a way to do wholesale direct, moving away from a monopolistic distribution system to one that's closer to direct, or certainly with less middlemen, could be something. These kind of economic models and questions are something that I know Jim Mortensen thinks a lot about. Jim, what do you think about that?
You know, Kickstarter is a touchy subject for most retailers.
Yes.
So I can certainly respect the idea of connecting readers directly to the book and for going to, doing crowdsourcing. I appreciate that. I can understand why folks would want to do that. A few years back, Fantagraphics actually did this, and they sold basically their whole line of comics for 2 or 3 months. And if you spend a certain amount of money, you would get everything they published. For us, we carry Fantagraphics books, not as many as we used to maybe, but we order 2 or 3 copies of most of them. And now when you go on Kickstarter, I don't know how many of those 2 or 3 guys or one guy has bought it already from you directly. And how am I supposed to order my stock levels if you're selling directly to my customer? The other thing, too, is it's one thing if it's a single creator doing a single book one time, as opposed to a publisher or somebody like that, where if you want me to carry your book 365 days a year, you can't just jump in when you got that one hot book where you can make a lot of money off of and take my customers. If I'm actually creating those customers, if I'm servicing them, if I'm developing their tastes, if I'm giving them, a path to become more robust, I deserve to have a slice of that. And if you want to jump in and grab the guys when there's a big hit, I'm not going to quite stock you as deeply as I will the other 364 days.
That's it, right? That's going to be the natural effect, which leads to a winnowing of the comic book shelves kind of in the stores anyway, and sort of like accelerates the trend.
It's tough because, like I said, I'd like to be supportive. I think it's a great thing to have crowdfunding for that. But giving that product to folks who I would be depending upon to sell to means that I'm not going to service that market anymore. If it's a marginal market. And if it's a big enough market, you don't need to do it, right? So it's a weird thing where there must be a break point in some place. But I think trying to use that as some sort of a larger structure that you can do direct market retailing on is just flawed, and it doesn't work for us at all. Trying to do them piecemeal, one at a time, keeping track of a number of different things, it just isn't feasible as far as in comparison to getting everything from Diamond, Baker and Taylor. Too many suppliers. There's a diminishing return.
Right. Being able to centralize through one supplier is kind of what led Diamond to the dominant position they're in right now, I think.
Right. Yep.
Convenience more than anything. Cliff, what do you think about that? In alternative forms of distribution, is that a possible solution?
Yes, but not Kickstarter. Kickstarter, I mean, it's a great system for the people who are selling on Kickstarter. They get to sell at full retail to the customers who are truly dedicated to them. And then after those orders are filled, as an afterthought, they get to sell at generally a less than standard wholesale discount to retailers who get the leftovers and whose customers went to the creator to get it to start with. So we're stocking a book with no remaining established audience necessarily, and usually in quantities that are not what we want to be able to order at a lower discount, and we're getting it last in line. It is a model that is doomed to be cost ineffective for the retailer constantly. I'm not saying it's a wrong model for creators,
Right.
because sometimes the creator just feels that's the only way they can get the return. Alternative distribution, if you're talking about companies like TKO, a graphic novel and comics company that is selling direct to retailers with competitive discounts, no minimum orders, prompt shipping, and they're not competing with us on the product, or like the upcoming Bad Idea, which is rolling out gradually to some retailers trying to find a market. I'm not sure if the gradual rollout is something that's going to make everyone happy, but I do feel that the Dinesh and the team there have a plan that will encompass everyone and a plan with a good discount. So those are alternative distributions that I think would work.
Is there a world? Could it? I'm dreaming here again. I'm thinking, could there be a place where retailers are allowed to order Kickstarters at a retail at a price, not a lower than retail price,
Yeah, a wholesale price.
Sure.
Yeah, you jump in early on different Kickstarters. Say you got a diamond catalog every month of Kickstarters.
Sure. Well, let's look at it this way. I order from Diamond, or I order from Diamond. I get books I place an order. I get books from them. I have 30 days to sell it, and then I pay Diamond for the bill of that book. I order from Kickstarter. I pay them now. I may get the book in 3 months. I may get the book in 6 months. The worst was 27 months for 3 copies of a graphic novel I ordered from a creator early on a Kickstarter. He's had my money for 27 months. I got the book 9 weeks after he shipped it out to his direct customers. I had virtually no market left for the book. I had several people who, when they saw it, said, "Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad to see you got it. I loved it when I got mine 2 months ago." No, and I got it at a 40% discount, which means that even I got 3 copies. I had to sell at least 2 of those copies to really start to cover my cost, and then I wasn't making anything, not counting the fact that my money was tied up for 2 years. So I don't think the Kickstarter model works because I don't think it's built for wholesale.
I think as is, you're exactly right. I think there's a potential tweaking to that model that could work if the creators were smart enough to say enforce ship dates and have reasonable wholesale costs and not sell before the shipping date. Sure. Have a release date that could work.
50% off with shipping. Make sure that we have the book in our store before the first copy ships out to any of the customers ordered direct. Let people know up front the book's going to be available in stores day and date with the day we start shipping the book. It's a totally different business model, but I don't think most people doing Kickstarter want to do that.
Or to be fair, might not ever have considered it. Might not ever have even thought of it.
Well, I think many of them have priced. I think they've run their numbers, and I don't blame them. They've run their numbers based on the idea that if we're going to make money, we need to sell the bulk of our copies at this price. Let's say the price is, I'm going to say $25. They want to sell it to retailers for $12.50. Well, they may have to bump that price up to $30 and $15 to cover for the discounted price. Or they're going to take a loss on those copies because they priced based on the direct-to-consumer model. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're being.
No, yeah, I agree.
I'm saying
I think
the business
both
is structured that way.
Requirements perhaps might have to be in there. Like if a retailer will commit to 5 copies or 10 copies, there could be an increasing scale of discount.
That's what I was thinking,
to try and build the volume. But I want to hear from Leaf for a second. Leaf on the Kickstarter topic, because I met a Kickstarter creator. I did a little review of his book on my show. What's your feeling on this subject?
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot.
I mean, I absolutely agree with. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with everybody else. You know, the Kickstarters, I've supported a lot of them. You gobble up a lot of the audience, like 90% of the audience for the books, and you know the cash flow tied up, and the slow delivery are all major problems. And it's great for creators, but it doesn't meet the needs of retailers at all.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're all agreed on that one. Well, let's pivot a little bit and keep talking retail, but let's talk about, I think there's a lot of signals we've been seeing even before COVID, even before all this stuff happened, that publishers, particularly DC, is looking to make a lot of changes. There's been high corporate ownership changes that are forcing a new economic reality there. There have been changes at the top and the head of DC, with Dan Didio getting the boot. And beyond that, if you just look at a DC comic from the past year or so, and if you look at the ads in there, on almost every single ad is a page for a book that looks exactly like a scholastic young adult graphic novel. And it is clear, to me anyway, that DC is making a hard pivot, at least to a large extent, to try and court that bookstore audience. Maybe it says in case the direct market doesn't pan out the way they want. Cliff, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I do think we're seeing an interesting pivot in the field. I am not sure how what's going on now is going to affect it. I think it's going to throw it off, is my first thought, because this pivot was built on the idea that the comics, they could support some of that change from the money coming in from the established comics market. The tried and true stuff that's selling every month pretty reliably helps to build a financial foundation for the bolder experiments. Now that, at least for the next few weeks, that foundation has been taken away, it's much tougher to say what will be. Will they come back and decide, let's play it safe and let's publish the stuff that was selling rather than trying to make any big changes? Let's rebuild the base, the foundation first. I have asked both publishers and publicly on Facebook and other places, I have asked that publishers consider, when they come back, taking a look at the lowest selling 25% of their line that was scheduled to be published and cancel it and say, we're going to give you fewer books because your customers have less money in their pockets after all this. They can't buy everything. We're just canceling the bottom 25% for 6 months, for a year, maybe forever. And we're going to publish the best stuff we've got, fewer books, but only the top titles, and give you books to help build more excitement in the customer base. Because right now, if we can't rebuild that foundation, no ambitious plan for any publisher is going to work when the money they need to build it with isn't coming in.
Great point. I think that sometimes it's forgotten that the success of this industry, and even the success of stores on a micro level, rises and falls on the quality of the comics. And that's coming straight out of the creative teams that are engaged on the comics. And as those things slip and interest slips, there's just not as much of a compelling reason to read.
And we dilute that interest if we give them too many books in one genre, one family. We dilute the interest because we dilute the budget. No one can afford to buy them all. Some people decide it's better to buy none. Some people, they get so disappointed with the lowest selling, least popular books in that line, it sours them on the entire line as a result. So we've got to rebuild that sense of quality rather than just throwing out 100 books, and if we didn't make as much money, throw out 110 the next month and 120 the month after that.
Jim, we talked a little bit about this earlier about the YA scholastic type pivot, and you had some interesting thoughts on that. What are you seeing? What kind of writing are you seeing on the wall?
Well, the reality is that Scholastic owns that space right now. I mean, they have done so much and they dominate so much of that shelf space. And in fact, just kids, young adult in general, just makes a ton off that area. And it's ironic because DC used to own that space in bookstores. I mean, Vertigo sold tons, Batman sold tons. I mean, they really dominated that space, and DC's just done a horrible job in managing their backlist and managing what they want to have happen. So while it is a pivot, it's also an attempt to regain what they've lost, which is the market share in bookstores and in that direct, non-direct market area. And so I think it's a good thing for them. Most of those titles have sold pretty well for us, some more than others. But most of them have found an audience, and it's a nice way to hopefully try to bridge some of that space between what Scholastic or First Second does and what we do, and hopefully give them something that sort of fits in between.
You talked about that was the point you brought up earlier that I thought was so fascinating. That there's no bridge between like kiddie comics and like the Joker pornographic style graphic novel, right? With inks by Mick Graham.
Well, no.
There's that, which is funny because that's all that comics used to be thought of as was juvenilia, but we have sort of ceded the juvenile market to video games and whatever else.
Sure. Yeah. And, sorry. Go ahead, Cliff.
Cliff, did you have
one thing I was going to add to that? When publishers first started talking about trying to do middle reader and all ages superhero books, the first thing I said to them is, let me remind you that every Marvel comic that Jack Kirby did was an all ages book. Every Marvel comic that Steve Ditko did was an all ages book. You don't have to draw and write down to them to produce all ages books. Some of the books that we consider the best comics of the first 50 years of the industry, every one of them was an all ages book. So it can be done without the writing down and drawing down that some people feel like they have to do. And that's why I think Scholastic owns the market. They don't feel the need to dilute the quality of the book in order to call it all ages. They produce something that is excellent for what it is.
You're so right, man. The latest Raina Telgemeier book, Guts, talks about issues that no other comic has ever talked about before, in a way and for people that no one has spoken to in that way. It made me cry. It made my daughter cry. It's an amazing book. Leaf, you have one of the best young adult and all ages sections in your store of any of the stores that I go to. Anyway, I love your selection of stuff there. So talk about how you see that as a critical part of your market, or what, how are you using that to try and like grow new readers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think it is the future of comics. There's a reason why, that is the biggest growing market for both comics, just general books. And kids really like comics. They're not necessarily interested in superheroes, but they are interested in comics. And so that's an area that I actually, didn't have an affinity with when I first opened, but it's an area that I continue to grow. And I think that DC is smart to push that area. It is sad that the main sort of cheerleader for that publishing effort is gone, and then now Dan DiDio is gone, and I feel that lack of leadership within DC is really telling right now. We still haven't gotten any sort of statement from DC, and their plans are really amorphous. I know that there are people inside the company that are really fighting for us, but the AT&T overlords have different opinions, and that's scary.
Okay, Mick, let's talk. Speaking of Mick's former overlords, or sometimes overlords, Mick, what do you, with the recent change at the top, Dan DiDio to Jim Lee, what does that mean to you as a creator about the creative direction of DC, and do you think it's a positive thing or a negative thing?
Well, I don't know how that company runs. I always say I wish I was a fly on the wall in editorial meetings and not actually there. I wouldn't want to actually be there, just be the fly on the wall. But what I've heard, Jim Lee isn't that kind of a leader. You know, he was the creative guy, and Dan was the guy that was running the joint. So when I heard that Jim was going to be taking that commitment, I just went, wow, that doesn't seem. I wouldn't have thought he would have taken it.
Well, I mean, he is the co-publisher, right? It's supposed to be half his job. Right. And when I look at DC from the last 10 years or so, I see Dan Didio's fingerprints on a lot of things. Right down to those stupid Svengoolie ads that they've been running that I have found out were like written by him personally, because Svengoolie is like a huge hero of his and whatever. I don't find that's a problem. Like, I don't think that's a big deal, except it just shows a little bit how out of touch I feel like he was with.
Totally, Now, and then you heard rumors that AT&T could potentially put some suit in that position. It hasn't happened yet, but God. I just don't know that you need. I'm Jim Lee, for as good as he is at what he does, I'm not sure that that's the role for him, or at least he hasn't really. When they bought Wildstorm and brought in DC Comics, I really believe the key objective in that was to get all of the Alan Moore titles back into the DC fold to sell in bookstores. That was the key objective of that whole thing, because they've done nothing with anything else really. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They're like, we need some of that sweet Mick Gray ink action.
and Mr. Moore was not happy at all, you know. So
guys,
happened, and they made out on it.
So I have one more channel I want to discuss, guys. I want to talk about the mass market. And again, this comes back to DC, because DC, for all of any complaints about them, they've certainly been trying things in different markets in different ways, different formats, different things. The Walmart 100-page specials that were exclusive to Walmart for a long time had a mix of reprint content. I honestly believe that thick format with a mix of reprint, or maybe even all reprint comics at some point, in the sort of a Shonen Jump Japanese style, could become the future of the periodical comic. I don't know. I want to know what you think. I especially want to know Cliff, what do you think about that?
I think, for those of you who haven't been lucky enough to see it this week, DC shipped a 100-page From Beyond the Unknown 1. I think of it as the first really good reprint style book that DC did, because they quit trying to put 24 new pages followed by new 52 stories that nobody wanted the first time, so we're going to try to make you read them again. Instead, they gave us classic reprints of a Jose Luis Garcia Lopez Superman Adam Strange story. They gave us a beautiful Green Lantern story. They gave us a Jim Aparo Batman story in the back, just beautiful artistry that is what most people think of, non-comics readers think of when they think of those characters. That's the sort of art they think of. And this book looks the way all of those books should have looked all along. Self-contained stories in the back, not chapter 3 of a 7-part story that they're not going to reprint the rest of, but something that people wanted to read. It looked great. It's going to be a good book to sell. And if this is the model for the future, it's going to be great. Now DC needs to quit stabbing the comic shops in the back and give us those books at the exact same time, rather than making us wait 2 to 4 weeks after Walmart puts them out before we can try to sell them. It doesn't hurt me as much in my area, because most Walmarts here don't carry them. But it is frustrating on a nationwide basis.
What did you think of then repackaging the new content that was in there into like those Batman and books that they put out, and charging $4.99 to the direct market for the single story?
That was a catch-up policy. They had already honored their 1-year commitment to Walmart for exclusive material. They had all that new material they had paid for. This was a way to make money off that material and pay lip service to the promise, we're going to make that material available to you in comic shops as well. Sure, we're going to make it available to you later at a higher per page cost, but we're making it available to you.
So one thing that I think Walmart, that those comics could serve as the feeder market, right? That was the idea, that we've lost the 7-Elevens and the corner stores for comics. So where is that entry level? Where is that kid going to get their first comic? I've heard people saying that maybe that package even was too high of a price point in the modern age. Jim, what do you think about what did you think about the Walmart Comics initiative?
You know, if you know, so we need to have outreach at some point, right? I mean, so much of DC's output in the last few years has been trying to strip mine the same audience, right? I mean, we're multiple years in and we still get 2 different covers for every single comic. So it's part of their publishing plan to try to sell multiple copies to multiple people, or to sell the trade paperback to the same person that bought the comics, who then buys the hardcover, then buys the absolute edition, and trying to squeeze more money out of the folks we have rather than go out and get new folks, right? So I kind of like the idea that they're going to go out with an aggressive price point, a reprint package. The biggest thing for us that was really insulting with DC was that they got top tier writers and artists. You know, Tom King sells our market huge. He has an impact. What he puts his name on sells, better or worse. Some people like him, some people don't. But you don't need his name to create new content for Walmart. You don't need his name to create new content for Target unless you are trying to drive our customers into their stores. That's one of the major issues we had. I think if it was just a matter of reprint content and getting Chuck Dixon to pound out a new Nightwing story, it wouldn't have been a huge deal. And then giving us these $5 2-issue merged together things with Batman Universe, not putting Bendis' name on it anywhere where you can see it, not putting Tom King's name on it, but putting it huge. You know, it was badly priced. It seemed like it was meant in order to tank that market. We'll sell the trades, I'm sure, once we get them after the hardcovers, after we got these $5 reprints, after those were reprints of the initial thing. So, I mean, again, we're monetizing it 4 or 5 times before we actually just have a general good to sell. So, you know, DC's always done some outreach. We need to have outreach. We need to find new people to bring in. But the way they did it really showed how far they've strayed away from the direct market. You know, it used to be that DC was the gold standard. They were the most favored nation. Whatever they did, I would stand behind because they had the backs of retailers. But with with Paul Levitz leaving, with Bruce Wayne, Bob Wayne leaving.
You may be getting ahead of yourself.
Exactly.
Bruce Wayne may be leaving soon, yeah.
Who have a connection to us as direct market folks. As those guys move on, you know, we've been seeing in the last 3, 4, 5 years fewer and fewer, you know, less interest in trying to cater to our market. Or, you know, at the very least, Bob Wayne would be somebody who would step in and say, look, this needs to be available at the same point, the same time, in the same area as the stores that support us 365 days a year for the last 70 years. And if we can't do that, we shouldn't be doing it. You know,
that was the telling point, right?
And we're into a new regime now, and now AT&T bought them, and now we're even into a worse regime that's far more bottom line oriented.
Yeah, I thought that was a telling point because the DM really was founded on the idea of like almost exclusivity and earliest day and date and all that stuff. And this was the first time to really stick it to them. Leaf, did you have a point you wanted to make about that? I wanted to ask you. I know San Francisco is not a big Walmart town. So where are the new readers coming from in San Francisco then? Where are the new comics kids supposed to come from?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the content and, you know, the comics that are good. You know, Mr. Miracle by Tom King and Mitch Gerards brought in a lot of readers, and Jonathan Hickman's X-Men reboot or whatever brought in a lot of people that hadn't been reading comics in 25 years. So it goes back to like just quality comics.
You're so right. And there was a hunger there for that stuff that popped, right? It popped for a minute there on X-Men and some of this other stuff. Cliff, did you have a point to make about that?
Yeah. One of the things that I think Marvel and DC are both doing most wrong is I think they have the best outreach tool possible, and they're not putting it in that market. I think Marvel should be massively, and DC should be massively overprinting their dollar comics that they're printing for us, which are always supplemented with ads for a new project that it relates to that's available in comic shops. Get those dollar comics into Walmart. Get those dollar comics into Target, and in every one of those, there's an ad. If you like this story that features Adam Strange, he's appearing in a new series available in comic shops. Marvel's True Believers, every one of them is themed to link to an event going on in our shop. Dollar books, proven quality, mass numbers of those in the mass market. That is the best entry level of all, and that's what I think publishers need to be doing. I think they're totally thinking about this wrong, because to the mass market, every book is a new book. It doesn't matter if it's a reprint to us or not. It's a new book to them.
That's right. I actually felt like the Bendis Batman stuff from the Walmart stuff was maybe the best Batman book I've read in a long time for that middle audience.
And yet they introduced a new character in that book, which meant nothing to the Walmart reader, but it was entirely designed to divert our readership to Walmart in search of the first appearance of a new character.
I don't really get. I almost feel like you would have to be an idiot to make that as your strategy. Like, we're going to steal all those lucrative comic shop customers and get them to come into Walmart. Like, that's never going to happen. They might buy that one book, okay. But
that's right. But it boosted the sales of that one book early on, so that it made the numbers look more desirable in that market.
Yeah, there's something to that.
It also made our customers aware and we have some that are aware to this day, the few who do buy those books, that Walmart gets them first, and the Walmart books have different covers on them. So those speculators, if you've checked some of the speculator sites on Facebook, they actually try to organize drives to go buy all these books at Walmart. If you can't buy them, go to Walmart and damage the ones they've got, so that those of us who have bought them now have the fun.
Well, Mick, quickly on Walmart, I want to know, you got any of your stuff been reprinted in that? Are you getting a little extra juice on the side from reprinting of that stuff?
I've never even seen a Walmart book. I tried once. I tried to go to a Walmart and find one, but I didn't. I haven't been reprinted in any of the Walmart stuff yet at all. I would love to. Why not? I love to get reprinted anytime I can get reprinted.
Sure.
But I totally agree about Walmart books should be just exclusive reprint. It shouldn't be new material whatsoever. That is messing with these guys, and that's ridiculous.
For no really good reason.
It's not going to help. They're going to sell.
Big takeaway. Yeah.
They're going to sell just as many with just. I mean, think about back in the '60s, reprint comics were big. Did a lot of those 100-page giants and stuff. That would go over. I think they should do it in Target. I think they should do it in Walmart. But it's all reprint. It's just reprint stuff. It's nothing new.
And I would think that would allow them to keep the cost down as well and make it an affordable reprint package.
Yeah.
Dollar comics again.
I think
dollar, cheap as you can get them and sell them there as promo. It's a promo item.
This is following on to the model they've set up for DVD or Blu-ray releases or video game releases, which is, if you want to have the gold gun, you got to go to Target and buy their version. If you want to have the platinum gun, you got to go to Walmart or buy their version. If you want to have this version, you got to go to GameStop and buy that version. There's that sense that we need to have this exclusive content. We need to differentiate ourselves from others. We need to have things that can't be gotten somewhere else, and they need to come to us to get it. So I think it's establishing themselves as a player in that general, milieu, rather than specifically, looking to monetize that one thing.
So Derek McCaw chimes in here in the comments. Santa Clara County Walmart didn't get them at all, which raises a great point that, guys, they pursue these mass retailers. But then even at the mass retailers, it's so different from state to state and region to region, and then even store to store, that you're not going to get a consistent display of your material, and you're certainly not going to get the hand selling and love that you're going to get out of any one of these gentlemen that you're seeing on the screen right here. So I don't know if I want to go every Wednesday and show up at Walmart and wait for comics.
can comics exist without retailers?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Mick, because that takes us right into our next topic. The last channel that I want to get everybody's opinion on, that is digital, right? So this is the moment in time that literally today was the last day you guys are going to get new comics in your shops for who knows how long. Are they going to stop publishing them digitally? There's still comics in the pipeline coming that have not come to the printer. They've got those files digitally. They can be uploaded to Comixology. Can they? Will they? Should they? Lee, what do you think?
I think they should not. I mean, it definitely has potential to cannibalize, but at the same time, my customers, they don't want digital comics. They want real comics. I think that pushing the digital is a way to actually try to keep creators working. That's one of the parts that I'm curious about with Mick is how are creators being affected, and I think that the publishers feel a great responsibility to being able to still give them paychecks, whether they're selling the comics digitally at all. I don't think that it's going to be a very small market that goes to digital.
Yeah,
most people actually do want to come into the store and buy a real comic.
And I think that's exactly true.
Yeah, I think the best idea that I've heard, and I want to get you guys' opinions on it, the best idea I've heard floated is that, because there's creators that need to get paid. There's the whole creative pipeline too, right? Like Mick's work would totally dry up if there's no comics coming out. The best idea, in my opinion, that I've heard is the ability to buy a digital comic now for people that are stuck at home and can't read comics and be able to get some kind of coupon to exchange it for the physical book when that becomes available. Cliff, why is that a bad idea?
Because we don't want to send those customers to the digital source. Even in the market is going to be in a very tenuous position after this is over, because as I said earlier, customers don't have the amount of spending money they had before. Overall, our clients, our customers, our friends who buy from us have lost buying power because of what's happened with the COVID crisis. We don't want them going to digital, because at this point, if we lose 3 to 5% of those customers because they decide they like digital, even though they didn't want to go there initially, that's going to be enough to put a fair number of shops out of business in the post-COVID environment we're going to have to deal with. We don't need to be sending them to digital. We're talking about the amount of money. Disney is paying Disney World staff for the entire month that they're closed. The amount of money they're paying on those paychecks is more than almost 3 times their entire revenue for Marvel comic sales in the month of January. So they can afford, every major publisher can afford for a couple of weeks to simply hold off. We don't even know what's going to happen with our orders. We'll be allowed to reduce them after this is over. We don't know. But they can certainly afford to hold up for the sake of the industry. If we lose 10% of our comic shops, that might be enough to make half their line unprofitable for them.
I think back, as far as digital comics, I think back when Chicago police were talking about body cameras on the police, and they said that they talked to the head of the policemen's union. He said there's 2 timelines for body cameras, which is over my dead body and eventually. And that's basically what digital comics are to retailers. We don't want it. We don't want it today. We don't want it tomorrow. We don't want it ever. And eventually we'll die, and that's all that it'll be. So it's nothing that we want to support. I don't want to send my customers there and ask for them to come back. I would really not appreciate them, looking at it and saying, "No, this is more convenient, and I can read it on the bus easier, and I don't have to worry about forgetting it at home. I'll just buy a couple of these." I would prefer for them to stay with us the entire time. Obviously, I've got a vested interest in that. But the other thing when you switch to digital is you do lose resale value. You have nothing physical to hold on to. You are basically, in a lot of ways, renting these materials, and you are contingent upon making sure that Amazon's a going concern, that they are going to continue to support this product, that what you put into it is going to be worth anything. And, while we necessarily, not all of us are as keen on emphasizing the collectability aspect, that first Harley Quinn is worth real money. Yeah. And that might have paid for your entire collection for the last half of that year.
I think that's a great
digital comic. You don't have that. You can't get it signed. You can't be part of that. And there's not an actual physical relic.
I honestly, one question.
Yeah, go, Cliff.
One question. Have any of you guys, as an experiment, have you bought a digital comic through Comixology or Amazon in the past year?
No,
Did you? Oh, I have, because I want to see what would happen. The sheer number of discount, basically deep discount incentive offers I get for graphic novels from Amazon after having bought one book from Comixology just to test the market tells me that they want our customers for as much as they can get, not just for those few comics. And if they can get them to buy digital, they want to then pump as many ads to try to divert that business away from us as possible. My staff is still amazed at how many deep discount ads we will get because we got on that list. And I did it entirely to test to see, are they just trying to sell a book, or are they trying to use that book as leverage to sell a service and try to divert print customers to all digital? And that's what they want to do.
I think it's an interesting point. I think there's like reading a digital comics puts into there's a big value difference. That's how I always thought the idea of paying full price for a digital comic alone to me is ludicrous. Mm-hmm. I could see buying them if it was a much lower price, but just like Jim said, there's so many it's trade-offs. One is not better than the other. Same with ebooks. There are trade-offs, but I think there's more negatives to reading digitally books and comics and anything else. You can't resell it. You don't own it. All those things that Jim said are really important. Leaf?
Yeah. I think comics are very much a browsable product. The publishers sell a lot more because our customers are able to come into our stores and look at the comics, flip through them, and be convinced it's a product that they want to buy. That you don't have that experience with digital comics. That browsability really matters a lot, and it does enable publishers to sell a lot more. Comics online, they're just another product, another thing that like it's out of sight, it's out of mind. If it's not like being in your face, but that pattern and that habit of coming into a comic book store and visiting it and talking to someone that's knowledgeable about it is really valuable to my customers, and I think customers everywhere. Like they are so hungry for that experience.
Has anybody seen a graph? I have no idea this. I've never seen the numbers. Has anybody ever seen a graph or numbers on digital versus print comics over the last 5 years? Does it do this?
For sure. Digital comics are flat and
digital comics aren't
digital comics are way below print comics and not really growing. Like growth has flattened out on them. It has not gone the way that they've wanted it to go at all.
Yeah, because
I
always said that floppies would die if that digital number went like that. Floppies would die. The companies wouldn't do it. But if they're not doing anything,
well, I think Jim nailed it. About say that again, Leaf. I'm sorry.
They sell about as much as Midtown, which is
like
enough
one store
to move the dial, but it's not really anything.
Well, I think Jim nailed it when he said about collectability, because I'm one of those guys idealistic guys that opened his store and threw out all the back issues and said comics are for readers. And people who think comics are for collecting are bad people, and they're wrong, and they're bad. And that's not why you should give me money for your comics. You should do what I say you should do with your comics, right? And over time, I just realized that is a sucker's game. People buy things and collect things for different reasons and get joy out of them for many different reasons. And just because you're a collector and appreciate the value of comics doesn't mean you don't love those comics and read them too, man. The biggest collectors are truly the biggest readers and biggest fans. So that's one of those things that I had to come around on, and I didn't really understand until I'd sold my store and I looked back on all the mistakes that I made. Collectability was the thing that let comics stay alive for the last 10 years and do better while the rest of the print world went down. Comics stayed okay and actually went up a little. Cliff?
We had a customer, a remarkable man, a doctor in his 70s, who had been an avid DC fan since he was 12 years old. He was diagnosed with cancer, and he knew the likely prognosis was that he was going to pass away from the cancer, and unfortunately he did. The last 18 months of his life, he said the only thing that gave him real joy, in addition to reading new comics, was reacquiring the books that he had loved as a kid, because it reminded him of how happy he used to be and why he fell in love with comics to start with. And he was very active in collecting that. And he said, these aren't just pieces of paper. This is little bits of happiness for me. Every one of these bags contains a little piece of happiness.
And you know, even if your thing is, man, I want to go get this comic and I want to flip it on eBay or whatever, I honestly don't have too much of a problem with that. If you're not hoarding and taking away from other people, I think that's okay.
And you're talking to a guy here who, I'm the guy who breaks open every CGC case when I buy a CGC book, because if I can't flip through it, I don't want it. I've actually gotten very good at knowing where to hit it with a hammer and where to put the screwdriver to crack that thing open.
Well, which I'll tell you, my favorite book of the week every week.
I just bought a CGC Superboy 6 while we were talking. It will be cracked open as soon as it gets
nice. The books that I'm loving the most on the stands these days are those facsimile editions, because I look at them and I just look back in time and I go, I can't imagine the 60s. I pulled this first Green Lantern off the shelves. Like, what a knockout it was. What a beautiful package on the outside and the inside, all the extra text pieces and all the extra stuff that they used to throw in there, really to get over shipping issues, as I understand it, to put some educational content. So they got a lower discount and shit, but whatever. It was a fun package, a meaty package that a 12-year-old kid or whatever would pick up and get a good hour's worth of entertainment out of for 12 cents. Right. So now I'm going to go buy $4 for the cheapest comic, right? And a Disney Plus subscription is going to cost me $6 for a month's worth of unlimited streaming entertainment straight into my eyeballs. So there's a value question going on in comics. I honestly don't think digital is the way, but I think some of the stuff that you guys have talked about as far as price points and packaging and formats are things that they just have to explore if they're going to survive.
I want to change my question. I want to say, can retailers survive without floppies, without monthlies?
Okay. Here's a good question. The real question to me, though, is without comics have had to pivot, right? Online retailers, so businesses had to transform and become gathering places, third spaces. You got gaming there. You got gathering and events and stuff. With COVID, that stuff goes away. That was the one advantage. So now, like in the absence of that, what's the differentiator retailers can do to make your store a viable place to go shopping for comics? What's the next move? Yeah, crickets. I love it.
I'll take that.
Well,
I'll take that.
Lee,
I think that, my store in particular, we have a large indie selection, and without periodicals survive. I mean, my store and Brian Hibbs's store and Comic Experience and stores that are really diversified will do very well without periodicals. Stores that are all in on Marvel, no. All in on DC, probably not. But the question is, without those stores, is the larger industry sustainable? And I don't know. I mean, could your Boom or your Oni, your Dynamite sustain themselves in a market that was smaller? I don't know.
Well, the last point I want to talk about here, guys, is remedies though that are coming out, the potential remedies. There's a lot of arguments about like what publishers, distributors should be doing to help you guys out in your stores. So the big argument that I'm seeing out there is returnability. Marvel, who has always hated returnability, had to be sued into creating a system where a comic can never be late again, so they never have to return a comic book again. They want to offer a bigger discount. I honestly didn't see what the terms of the discounts that they're trying to offer are. My gut reaction to me as a retailer, if I was a retailer, I prefer a bigger discount to returnability. I'm from the Jim Hanley School of Retailing. So that's my preference. I don't know necessarily in this emergency situation what makes the most sense. Perhaps a combination of the two. Cliff, what are you thinking about that?
I honestly think because of the unpredictability of the next 6 months, I think returnability is important, but returnability is what we have been asking for from major publishers for years is different than this returnability. In the past, we wanted organized returnability that we knew about at the time we were ordering because we wanted the ability to find the ceiling for our orders. Now we want the ability to stop ourselves from falling through the floor with our orders. We want to, returnability is because we don't know how many of our customers can come back financially right away, and we've already locked in numbers. I appreciate Marvel's offer of an increased discount. It certainly is better than getting nothing at all, but returnability would be much more useful for me for 3 months once this is all over. Ideally, I would love to see both. I would love to see, even if it's 50% returnability and the improved discount, so that we have some safety net, because I really don't want to have to build forts out of leftover comic books. I'm tired of doing that.
Jim, returnability, discounts, both. What's the prescription here?
I mean, returnability is the most reasonable aspect because we just don't have any idea who's going to show up day 1 when it opens, day 5 when it opens, day 14, day 30. We don't know, are people going to pick up right where they left off, where it's just a pause? Are those folks people who didn't get a paycheck, who are part-timers and are now currently in debt and not going to be able to continue on? So if it's up to us to carry the load, we're going to reduce it to a level that we're comfortable at, which is really going to limit the people coming out and re-engaging with this format. So I think it's important for the publishers to stand up and allow us to have a longer sale window and to stand behind their products so that we can reestablish where we are without putting us out of business.
Leaf, I think I know where you're going to come down on this, but how do you feel about returnability, discounts?
Well, let's get clear. Discounts, the only discounts that Marvel was offering was discounts on the product that we already received. They were not offering discounts on products that we might order in the future. So returnability is the only answer. I mean, I just did my March order today. I finished it up, and I cut my Marvel and my DC orders to the bone, to subscribers only. And I put my money in the publishers that offered returnability and offered, a real sort of support for retailers. I'm selling comics. I'm not selling Marvel or DC superheroes. I believe in the art form and not just, capes and dollars, and that seems to be what Marvel and DC are offering. And they haven't communicated. They've been very, very silent, and it shows.
Are you able to talk? I don't know if you guys are allowed to talk about your sales, terms of sale or not. Like what kind of extra discount? What are we talking about that Marvel offer? Are they doubling your discount, or like what's
I can read it to you. I brought up their email while we were just talking.
No, that'd be great.
And the only reason I'm doing this is because It has been published online, and anyone can find any of a number
Yeah.
of comics news and rumors sites.
Okay.
The lowest discount any retailer gets from Marvel is 35% for a small store ordering very few. That discount will temporarily go to 65%, and it is good for. It was originally announced it was going to be good for all books shipping through the book shipping on April the 8th. Well, now those books on April the 1st and April the 8th, we don't know when they're going to ship. I presume it would still cover those. That 65% discount would continue for the lowest 3 discount tiers that Marvel offers for retailers. Then the discount goes to 70% for the next 3 discount tiers. And for the largest stores, those that would normally qualify for a 56, 57, 58, or 59% discount at Marvel, it goes to a 75% discount.
75. So at 50, I think like the sweet spot for major retailers is they're probably getting 55 off, or 54 off, or something like that.
But
right?
it favors the big mail order companies.
Sure, for sure, it's going to favor volume, just like their discounts do. For sure.
Sure.
And so that's interesting. That is a huge discount, though. I mean, that is a big thing.
We're looking at. I mean, the difference between 56 and 75. You're looking at almost Marvel is giving up 45% of their revenue on that book. What they were going to take in. Now, I thought it was a bold offer. I still think returnability would be better, but as someone pointed out, this would be about as good as 40% returnability would be, except you don't have to worry with stripping books or doing anything. I can understand there's a certain advantage to that because stripping books cost us all money. I'm tired of having to have employees there. And that is the next thing this industry needs to do. When we do get returnability for this, we need to go to universal affidavit returnability, where we fill out and sign a form and we quit shipping paper across the country at a great waste of labor and expense.
And resources and everything. Yeah, right, for sure. That's a tricky one, though. There's a couple shady retailers out there too.
But that's been true as long as the industry. I still remember finding out from Marvel that I don't know if you guys were around when Thor 337 came out. Were you selling comics in your shop back? That was been 82, I guess it was. I was, and that book disappeared quickly from the direct market. And so stores were going to the rack jobbers, the newsstand distributors all over the country. I went to a newsstand distributor and bought his entire shipment of that book so I could have more copies to sell at the store. Even though I bought every copy he had, he still told Marvel he had an 85% return rate on that book. He didn't have any. There were some publishers who said, we cut off a few stores because their return rate was 105%. And it's like, when you're claiming more than you got, you sort of know they're not telling the truth. That I understand is one of the reasons why some mass market bookstores that are no longer in business lost comics before they were no longer in business, because they were claiming returns in excess of what they were receiving. Okay,
but COVID aside, would you prefer a larger discount or a returnability with a decreased discount? For me, it was always larger discount is what I'm looking for.
Once COVID is over? Once
COVID aside, in general,
once the field has leveled out, I am willing to take significant, not 1 or 2%, but significantly larger discount in order to carry the books. But don't give me a larger discount and tell me, but you have to order 300% on this book of this other book that you sold 2 years ago, which was already incentivized to match this other book that you sold 18 months before that.
Oh man, that's a whole other topic we're going to have to come up with. Guys, I think we're about out of time. I want to give everybody a chance here. We're going to do one last thing. We're going to go around and we're going to do predictions, right? So I want a prediction. You got leeway to predict what you want. We're looking for something in the comics industry, but heck, if that's not what you want to talk about, do that. And if you have anything else you want to say, this is your moment, gentlemen. I want to start with Mick.
You're going to eat a bowl of chow mein and be hungry real soon.
Okay. That's a reasonable prediction
from the band. That's a quote from the band Sparks, I predict that was a great song by them. We're going to come out of this is the prediction. We're going to come out of this and we're going to be strong. But I just wanted to say that DC and Marvel, if they were smart when we come out of this, that they would highly discount, like cut the cover costs of books in half to bring people back into the shops and to help these guys out. I don't understand.
That's interesting. That's an interesting one, Mick. I've had that conversation with other people before. Like cutting the cover price cuts the amount of profit too that the stores bring in.
Exactly.
So really, unless it more than doubles the amount of people coming in, cutting the price in half is a net loser.
I see what you're saying.
So it's not as simple as that, but I get it. I do feel though that price, there is a certain point when we're talking $8, $9, $10 comics coming out with 10 different covers on them, something is broken in the market. Yeah. Leaf from Mission Comics, what's your prediction?
I think that we're going to see continuing an acceleration of some of the trends that we've seen, in the last couple of years of a greater shift towards comic book stores being more bookstores and, moving away from Marvel and DC. Marvel and DC have not shown up in this crisis. They really have, fallen down and just disappeared. And the publishers that actually showed up and shown their support for retailers will be rewarded. I think that's inevitable, and they are investing in my future and everybody's future, and I think that will pay off. And these big corporations, they don't necessarily care about selling the periodical comics. They don't really care about our customers. They don't really care about any of this. And, which is really sad because, obviously what we are selling and what they deem as valuable is valuable. They've made billion-dollar movies off of this. So, I think that, the future of comics is strong, but it's in, relationships with our customers and relationships with the publishers that support us.
Fair enough. Cliff Biggers, you got a prediction for us, man?
I'm going to give you 3. Prediction 1, I think 6 months from now, the Diamond Previews catalog is going to be significantly smaller than it is because some publishers in the back part of that catalog will not be around in 6 months, will not be able to survive this. And I think the bigger publishers are going to tighten their lines. Prediction number 2, I think we're going to discover over the next few weeks that periodicals are more important to this industry than people realize, and that we have to have strong periodicals as well as strong trades. And I am a store that keeps over 10,000 collected editions in stock at all times. And prediction 3, I think 6 to 8 months from now, the industry is going to realize that we would have been facing an extinction level event if Steve Geppi had not taken the sort of action he took at great cost to Diamond and to Steve Geppi personally. Wow. If it were not for the bold leadership of this man, I think that we would be, if we all had to keep receiving these books that we couldn't sell, and then you had to pay for them in a few months without having been able to sell them, we would have seen 20% of this industry fail. Yeah. And Steve Geppi.
That's a great point. That's a great point. It's easy to vilify a rich guy like Steve Geppi, but he actually honestly cares about the industry and honestly cares about
retail. He loves comics. He loves retailing, and he took a great personal expense for Diamond because he wanted to save this industry. And I don't think we would have been around without him.
Great point. I'm really glad you brought that up. Jim, bring us home with some predictions, baby.
Bernie Sanders will beat Donald Trump Jr. in 2024. DC will bring Vertigo Comics back in the same year, probably. Be nice time for retro feel. Peter Milligan probably still writing most of the stuff. I think that talking about online comics and digital comics, we'll finally see an evolution. We've been stuck in, with the music industry, this format that was based around the LP, that was based around a certain size, what you could sell, where it was at. CD changed that a little bit. And still we're releasing records, even though there's really no reason not to release a 3-song suite or a single song or 20 songs. And I think that comics will need to become untethered to the physical, not a 3x3 grid that happened to fit on the specific size of the paper that has a certain number of pages. And once we get past that in a digital format, then I think digital comics will be feasible. But I think as long as they're trying to ape our antiquated, quaint system, it's going to fail. And hopefully that's at least 10 years out.
Oh, man. Guys, that was great. I got a couple of predictions of my own. One, first of all, comics are stronger than ever before. Comics as an art form are the strongest they've ever been. They've not only got mainstream acceptance in the movies, they've got critical acceptance in libraries and teachers. We've got kids really embracing comics by the millions for the first time. The future of the art form of comics is humongous. How those are going to be sold is a big question mark in my mind. But I know if anybody's going to figure it out, it's going to be you dudes. And because you guys are smart, and the only retailers that are able to survive, the retailers that have survived as long as they have done it because they know what they're doing. They know not just about comics, they know about business, and they know about how those two things go together. So I predict success for you guys in whatever endeavors. And I also have one more prediction. We're going to do another live stream again. I'm going to do this on a more regular basis. You guys are all invited. I hope you had a good time because I had a fantastic time. This went like 10 times better than I thought that it could or would have.
Great.
I really enjoyed it. I want to thank all of you guys for joining me. You're always welcome to come back here anytime. If you want to do a one-on-one with me, you just ring me up and you got it, fellas.
Can we do it earlier next time?
Say that again?
Can we do it earlier next time?
I didn't think about that. You're on East Coast.
Leaf was like telling
earlier
me
Pacific time.
Wednesday, sure is fine, right? Because I got nothing going on. Maybe the next couple Wednesdays might be okay, but we'll try to move it to a time that's more conducive. Certainly when I do retailer panels. But guys, thank you again. Please.
I'm the East Coast guy. It's 1:15 and 1:20 in the morning right now.
So, thank you, Cliff, especially
Thank
for
you,
that.
Cliff.
Oh, I would not have missed it for the world. This has been great fun, guys. I really have
Great
enjoyed
meeting you all. Yeah.
So fantastic. Guys, keep your families close to you and keep them safe and enjoy the time that you have with them now. That's the only way we're going to make positives out of this. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, live stream audience. We hope to see you on Comic Book News, and we hope to see you on the next live stream. Thanks, everybody.